Hello, welcome to the VS Code live stream. I'm your host today, filling in for Burke. My name is Kendra. I'm a PM on the .NET team, and we have lots of exciting demos today. We have an awesome guest, but first I want you to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Wallaby and a product within there called Quokka with our guest who is Simon McKinley. Wanted to make sure I got the name right. So he's a developer at Wallaby. So please ask questions when we're throughout the demo. We're going to be taking note of those, and we'll kind of pile them on you, Simon, at the end. And we love getting chats and discussion.
Sounds good.
Cool. So do you want to hop into your demo right away?
Yeah, let's jump in. All right, so I'm just sharing my screen now. I think everyone can see. So what I'm going to start with today is I'm going to look at what maybe running some TypeScript code looks like just using the native Visual Studio tools that are available to you. And then we're going to see what the same experience looks like using Quokka. So I've got a little sample that I grabbed from the TypeScript playground. You see we've got a base class animal that has a move method with a console log, and then we have a snake that extends animal, that overrides move and adds slithering before then calling into the base class's move method. And similar thing with horse. And then we have, so we create an instance of a snake, we create an instance of a horse and cast it as an animal, and then we move both of them. So I've got this code, maybe somebody sent it to me and I want to run it. I've got it in VS Code, but how do I actually do that? Well, to begin with, I'm actually not running right now in any sort of project. So this is just a blank VS Code that doesn't have any open folders. So I'm going to have to create a folder. Let's just do that now. Oh, sorry, I'm popping up my terminal. So I'm going to have to create some sort of temporary folder. Let's call it TypeScript testing. And I need to initialize a package for that folder. I need to install TypeScript. I need to have some default TypeScript configuration. And I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to open up VS Code again. So now I have, I can see I've done this before. Now I've got a empty package just with TypeScript installed, basic TypeScript configuration, the default TypeScript configuration, and I'm going to create a test file. And you can see this is unsaved, so I don't actually have autosave turned on right now. So I'm going to save this file. Now I want to run it and see what it does. So again, I'm going to have to pop up the console, and I'm going to have to compile. So use TypeScript to compile this file. Okay, so TypeScript's compiled the file and it's turned it into JavaScript for us, which is nice. And now I want to run the file. So I'm going to have to say node and test.js. Okay, so a little bit of effort to go and just execute this file and see what it was doing. Now, if I want to make a change to the file, I need to go back to the file. And sorry, I've got large font so that everyone can see what's going on. So if I want to make it, instead of Sammy the Python, we'll make it Bob the Python. And I've had to save it again. I have to come back in here, recompile the file, run it again, and now we can see Bob the Python. So that's what the process looks like using the default tooling that ships with VS Code. And what we've done is we've created an extension that makes that a lot simpler. So I'm going to close this project right now that we just created, and we're going back to the empty project that we started with just our unsaved file. Now, actually, before we jump in, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to I wanted to explain that there are two different versions of Quokka. There's a free community edition, and there's a paid pro edition. Today in the demo, I'm going to be showing features from both versions. If you'd like to know what the difference is between the two and try out the pro version, then you can go to the quokkajs.com pro URL to see that. So I'm going to jump back into VS Code now. And when we first install Quokka, oops, sorry, wrong window. When we first install Quokka, Quokka adds a couple of extra commands to your VS Code command palette. So for example, we have, I want to run on save for the current file. I want to run once for the current file. I want to start on the current file. I want a new TypeScript file. We're going to have a play with a few of these today. But in this particular case, we've already got some code. We don't have any TypeScript installed. We don't have any TypeScript configured, but I want to run this code. So what I can do with Quokka is I can simply say, I want to start on the current file. So quokka.js, start on current file. And you can see there are a couple of things that have happened. We've popped up an output window, which I'll talk to in a little bit. I'm just going to collapse it for now. And there are some gutter indicators that have appeared, and we've actually got some values displaying in line. So what's happened at this point is Quokka has known that this is a TypeScript file. It started on the file, and in this case, we don't have anything configured. So Quokka is actually using its own version of TypeScript that it ships with. If you had TypeScript installed in a project, it would be using your project's TypeScript. Similarly, we don't have a TypeScript configuration file set up. So Quokka is using its own, it's using the default TypeScript configuration to run our code. And it's displaying any runtime values that we've logged using console log right next to our console log statement in our editor. So here we can see console log slithering, and we have slithering appear here. And these gutter indicators that you see here, they indicate which lines of our code actually executed. And all of this updates in real time. You can see that this is an unsaved file. So if I was going to edit this, I might say slithering slowly. As soon as I start to edit this, Quokka is actually displaying the runtime value. So it's not just grabbing the string and putting the string to the side. So if I was to say, have a date beside this, plus new date, you can see we've got the date appearing. And if I hover over this value, you can see it's actually showing exactly the date and time. So as I make changes to the code, we'll see that date changes as well as the values. It's grabbing the runtime values, not the design type or the string as it is. So let's talk a little bit about these gutter indicators. So I said that these mean they show coverage. What you might have, so green means that this particular line of code was fully executed. So in the case of something like class definition itself is not actually executed at runtime. It's not part of that runtime execution, whereas a console log or calling into another method is. So green means that all of the possible parts of this line of code that could be executed were executed. We might have, for example, an if statement. So if I say if true and false, then I might do something. Now, in this particular case, true and false is going to evaluate to false, and JavaScript is going to break out of here straight away and not execute any other conditions that are part of our if statement. So if I was to say true and false and true, Quokka actually knows this particular part of our if statement didn't execute. And because it didn't execute, Quokka is displaying an orange indicator instead of a green indicator. So very quickly you can see, oh, there are parts of this line of code that executed that, or that didn't execute that I was expecting to execute. So it's a good little visual indicator. Similarly, we know that because this always evaluates to false, we know that the body of this if statement is never going to execute. So if I was to do something here, and I might just take, I've actually got GitHub Copilot installed and running. So I might just take this console log true suggestion. And you can see we actually have a different color indicator now. We've got a white or gray indicator. And that means that this line of code didn't execute at all. So we've got the green, everything executed. We have partial execution, and we have didn't execute at all. And finally, there's one other type of indicator that we'll get, which is if an error occurs. So if I was to say, let's say a mistyped console log, I say console autocomplete for me, .log, hello world. You see we've got an error that's appearing in red. So the error appears right beside the line of code that caused it, and the indicator itself is now red. And the same thing occurs if we were to, for example, throw an error. So if I say throw new error, that will appear, the error text that was in the error that we threw will appear in red beside the error, and the indicator is also in red. So nice little indicators that tell us what's going on. What I might do now is I might jump into a different project, a little demo project to show Quokka running in the context of an existing project. So I'm just going to jump into my Quokka demo project. And I've got a couple of different files here, but the one that we're going to be interested with straight away is this demo.js. And I'll just collapse my Explorer. And here you'll see that we're importing delay, which looks like a delay function. From this delay file, we're importing people from a people file, and then we're doing some things. So I'm going to start Quokka again on this. So I can say start on current file, and I'll start Quokka on this file. And we have our values, so we can see some of this code didn't execute, so a partially executed gutter indicator. And we don't actually have any values being output because we haven't done anything yet. And you would have seen that the Quokka output console came up straight away. So it tells us that we're running on a demo.js. And in this case, we're not actually using TypeScript. We're using JavaScript, and we're using Node version 16. Now I'm going to come back to the Quokka output window, but for our demo, I'm just going to close it because we're a little bit limited with screen real estate. So we learned before that we can very quickly and easily log a value using console.log. So if we wanted to see what is the value of result, I can say console.log result, and we're seeing 2 + 3 is 5. So that's a nice, quick, and easy way to log a value. But with Quokka, you don't have console log if you don't want to. So after starting Quokka on a file, if you want to get the result of something, all you have to do is select it. So if I wanted to get the result or see the runtime value of result, all I have to do, double click, select the value, and you'll see Quokka is actually capturing that runtime value and outputting it right beside our editor. So selection is one way that you can get results out of Quokka, and I can press escape to cancel that value because I don't want to see it anymore. There's another way that you can see the runtime value of a variable, and that is simply by typing the variable name. So if you type the variable name, so using an identifier expression, so we just type the variable name by itself, Quokka will log that value. So you'll see the value 5 being logged here. And this highlighting that you see here is actually coming from Copilot. So it's just a suggestion from Copilot. So the value 5 is logged simply by typing the variable name. But there's another way that we can get values to display in our editor with Quokka, and that is with a special what we call a live comment. So we support both single and multi-line comments, and we have a special comment format. So // ? And what Quokka will do, it will now display the values in our editor. But this // ? Unlike select, it persists over time. So you can stop Quokka and restart Quokka on this file, and the // ? will always show this value when you start Quokka again. And I said we support both multi-line and single-line comments. So here you can see we've got people, and it looks like we're mapping age, but I don't know what people looks like. I could, if I wanted to, log the P object instead of the age after the map with a multi-line comment. And here you can see there's a bit more information being displayed. And if I hover over, we're seeing that displayed in our hover as well. And if I wanted to, let's just get rid of our multi-line comment. I could also select people. And again, I'm logging people. But in this particular case, I may not be super familiar with the data, and we're going to come back to have a look at this feature again in a little bit. We have a Wallaby Tools section that we add in the sidebar in VS Code. And if you go to Wallaby Tools, Quokka has a feature called Value Explorer. And Value Explorer actually takes that value that we logged, the runtime value that we logged, and it will actually show us it's an array with 10 elements. The 0th element has an age and a name, and so on and so forth. And Quokka is smart enough to know how to expand these things dynamically. So if you had a very big, let's say something like a browser object like window, you could then go and explore window and see all of the functions, or in this particular case, so Quokka is running in Node.js. And what I might do is I'm going to press escape to remove that log value. And in this case, I want to have a look at the Node.js process. So what does Node.js process look like? Well, it has a number of different functions. Debug. So these are obviously hidden functions, prefixed with underscore. It has an exit function. So you can explore values that you may not actually be super familiar with, whether you're importing them from another library or they're part of core Node.js. All right, so there's one more thing I want to show you with regards to logging values in Quokka before we move on. So we're going to come back to using our command palette. So we're going to say, I want to create a new JavaScript file. And this time, what I want to do is I want to enable Quokka's auto-log feature. So the auto-log feature will automatically log every single line of code that we write. So if I was, say, writing something like a calculator and I wanted to see every single step, every single intermediary result that's part of my code, then I can turn on this auto-log feature. So I'm going to go to a command palette and I'm going to say auto-log. Okay, so toggle auto-log, so enable it. So I'm going to do this, and now I can actually start writing my code, and I might say A equals 1 and const B equals 2, and you can see Quokka is immediately putting those values beside my code. And I might say const C equals A plus B times B. And Quokka is showing us those values. And if I come back up here, and again, this is running on an unsaved file, I can change the values, and you'll see that the value beside line 1 and line 4 are changing in real time as we type. Now, for beginners or even for experienced people, you may often find yourself using parts of JavaScript, like core JavaScript functionality that you're not super familiar with. So one of the things that comes to mind for me personally is I often am working with strings. There's substr and substring, and sometimes I'm working with arrays and I'm using some less commonly used, whether it's slice or splice, part of an array that I don't remember off the top of my head. And what we've done for Quokka for VS Code is, if you say Quokka.js, and in this case, we're not going to go new JavaScript file or a new TypeScript file, we're going to say new file. We've created a curated set of examples. Currently, they're mostly sourced from MDN documentation. But these examples, so for example, if I wanted to, I mentioned before, substring. Okay, so we have an example for JavaScript string.substring and string.substr. I might also, I mentioned before, array.splice. So let's actually have a look at array.splice. And Quokka has started running on this file straight away. And we can see our inline values being reported by Quokka. So we've got a nice example straight away of how array.splice works. And okay, I'm not going to actually look at the documentation yet. So we have this first parameter. In fact, let's just see what happens if we change the parameter. So right now, so this particular code is inserting February in the array. So now we have January, February, March, April, June. I am going to change this to 2 and see what happens. Okay, so I changed it to 2. And it's flipped March and Feb. So the first parameter must be where we're actually inserting. And what happens if I change this parameter? So if I change that to 1, okay, so that obviously looks like it's deleting values. If I change it to 4, it does nothing. Okay, so change it to 1, change it to 0. So nice, quick and easy. And if we look at the documentation, so start number, which is what we worked out, and the delete count, so the number of items to remove. So there are lots of different examples. So again, if you're new to JavaScript, or even you're experienced developer and you're just not familiar with a particular thing that you're doing, you can pop this up, experiment, play around, and it's a nice way to learn as well, as I said. Now, we spoke a little bit about live comments. Live comments are a little bit more powerful than just putting the / question mark. And again, I'm going to actually create another JavaScript file. One of the things that you can do with live comments is you can do some bespoke performance testing. So I'm going to create a new function, and I'm hoping Autopilot will help me with this. I'm going to create a Fibonacci. I don't think I spelled it properly. That's okay. Actually, it would help if I spell it properly. Fibonacci. And okay, so Copilot has given me a suggestion and the code looks correct. Okay, so now I have a Fibonacci function, and I want to see how long this takes to execute with some different parameters. So I might say, all right, so let's call Fibonacci with, let's try 10. And I can see the value is 55. So from what I remember, that sounds correct. But I want to do some performance testing. So to performance test with live comments, what you need to do is put a full stop after the question mark. And we'll actually, or Quokka will measure how long it took to execute this function. So if I change this to, let's say 20, let's see what happens. So we've gone from, what was it? 0.098 milliseconds to roughly 5 milliseconds. If I change it to 30, change to 67 milliseconds. What if I change it to 40? Okay, it's doing a bit more work now. And okay, so it took almost 5 seconds. And you'll see down the bottom, there's a little indicator in the status bar. So this is Quokka saying tick means I successfully ran your code. If there was some sort of error, we'd get an X beside it. And Quokka took 5,009.09 milliseconds to actually execute our file. And of that, 5,008.362 milliseconds was that Fibonacci function. So there's really not a lot of overhead to what Quokka is doing when it's running a file. Most of it, as you saw, was in that Fibonacci function. All right, so I'm going to move on to a different demo now. So we're going to have a look at some code and how Quokka might help us a little bit if we're missing an import. So I've got some code here that loads some placeholder data from the JSON placeholder website. So it loads posts, and I'm intentionally missing an import. Again, I'm going to start Quokka on this file, so I can use the start on current file command, and there's a shortcut for that, Control KQ. And okay, so intentionally missing import, fetch is not defined. This is what we're expecting. So Quokka runs your code using Node.js, and fetch is actually only available by default on in browsers. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to import fetch. Now, I happen to know that we can import fetch from the Node fetch package. So I want to import from Node fetch, and we still have a problem. So let's increase our console a little bit. So Quokka is telling us you need to install the Node fetch package. And we have two options available to us. We can install Node fetch for the current Quokka file, or we can install Node fetch for our entire project. So what we might do in this particular case, let's install it for our entire project, because this is a dependency that I'm going to need going forward in my project. And Quokka will add this as a dependency in our package JSON. So I'm going to click on this, and we can see a little status indicator that means Quokka is working. And in half a second, Quokka has installed that package, and it's rerun our file, and now everything looks to be working. So everything's green, but I can't actually see what the results of anything are. So remember I said we can simply select a value. So this is a response from Node fetch. Let's select the value, and I can go to my my Quokka value explorer, and I can actually see, okay, so here's our Node fetch. There's a body that's been returned. There's a header. Okay, status 200. Okay, so the response worked. Now I might want to, for example, have a look at our JSON, and I could say console.log JSON and go back to our value explorer, and we can see that we have an array of 100 elements, and we have the values being displayed in our value explorer. Now at this point, if we wanted to, you could also right click and say copy data. So you copy this entire array and go paste it in a different file if you wanted to. Similarly, you could actually do the same thing over here. So if I was to select the JSON here, I can actually say run the Quokka JS copy value command. So that again would copy to our clipboard. Or if I wanted to, so I might be looking at the structure of an object and say, okay, this is the actual thing that I need to get out of this object. I could say right click and copy path, and that will copy the path to my clipboard, and then I can go and paste that into my code and start using it. There are a couple of last features that I wanted to show. I haven't really spoken much about the output window. Normally, if you're running Quokka, I'm just going to change my zoom a little bit. Normally, if you're running Quokka, you'll probably see something more like this. It might be a little bit hard to see, but you'll have your output window displaying alongside your code. So you can see everything nicely in one view. But just for today's demonstration, we've got the zoom turned right up. So the Quokka output window provides a couple of CodeLens actions. So if you wanted to, you could see the CPU profile for this current file. So I'm going to say view CPU profile, and I have I'm prompted, do you want to open the profile in Chrome DevTools, or do you want to open it in VS Code? I'm going to say, let's open in VS Code. And Quokka has run our file, and it's generated the CPU profile. I'm just going to close the output window for now. And you can see a lot of that time was spent idle, which is probably what we would expect because we're making a network request. We know that that Node.js is asynchronous, so it's not really doing anything while that network request is going on. So the majority of our time was spent idle. And if you have the VS Code Flame Graph extension installed, and the CPU profiler will actually prompt you to install it if you don't have it installed and you want to use this feature, you can click on the Flame Graph and you can actually see what or where the time was being spent. So in this particular time, it looks like there's some setup time, and then we have our idle times. And then if I zoom in on our Flame Graph and move across a little bit, you can see a lot of that time seems to be processing the stream, and then we've got some cleanup. One of the other nice things, so I'm going to just go back down into our little Quokka status bar indicator. So I'm going to click on the status bar to bring the output window back up. One of the other things that you could do is you can view recent Quokka files. So if you say view recent Quokka files, and again, I'm just going to close this window, you can see all of the files that you've recently run, and you can quickly run them again. If you're running it on a file that existed on disk, you can click run and it will run on the file as it exists on disk right now. Or if you wanted to run a copy of the code that existed when you were running it and make some modifications, you can select this clone and run option. So that's another handy thing. You're creating a little bunch of test files and you want to come back to something that you're working on before, you can use that recent files action. Now in Quokka, you may not actually, you probably notice that it's always running as soon as we type on every keystroke. You may not want that behavior depending upon your workflow. So what you can do is actually, you can tell Quokka, what I want to do is actually want to run.
Hey, Simon, I'm going to hop on. We're trying to do a 30-minute. This is such good content. We're so excited about it. We want to answer a couple of questions before we get cut off in the stream. Is there anything you wanted to wrap up? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think just going forward, we've got quokkajs.com website. So if you want, contact us. We've got a Discord, a Twitter, Facebook, email. If you want to try Quokka and you want to try community version, just go to the marketplace to download and play around with. If you want to try the pro version, just go to our website. We've got a free 2-week trial.
Absolutely amazing. The link is there on the screen. Oh my gosh. So you just covered so much. I was honestly blown away. It was good that my camera wasn't on because I was just like, every time you hit something new, like at first I saw console log and I was like, oh, but what if I don't want all those console logs in my code? And you can use comments and you can have it automatically output like that. Oh my gosh, such a cool string of features. So we got one good question. It was from It's Connor. If you want to, if our backstage crew can put it on, but it's one thing about this side menu value inspection. They were wondering if it actually slows down or hangs VS Code if the object or something is a large set of data. How do you kind of deal with that? Yeah.
We actually we load the data dynamically, so we limit how much of the object we actually walk and display by default, and then as you go and we lazily load the parts of the object that you want. So let's say you have a large object. By default, I think we may, don't quote, we may load maybe 10 levels in the hierarchy by default and cut off at certain number of array elements and whatnot. And then if you want to see more, when you click to expand that, Quokka will actually re-execute your code file and go and get more information and knows to update it in Visual Studio.
Oh, wow. So it's only grabbing what it needs. And the way you've displayed performance in milliseconds with periods and also like at the bottom of the editor. Oh my gosh, this is all such packed full of helpful features. We got a lot of chats that were very excited about it. Let me just comb through again and see if we have any questions. A few people wanted to know, yeah, how do they get it? What's free? What's not? So lots of excitement there. Oh, looks, I think Alvaro says you were just about to show a key feature and we want to get to it. Is there one thing you want to show?
I was going to show that there's a run on save and a run once feature. So if you're working with like hitting an external API, you could say, look, I only want to run this once, or I only want to run when I actually save my file. So those are the options. And I think we were pretty much done with the demo at that point.
Awesome. So we also had one thing. What made you? How did this come to you with Quokka? Like, I know the value prop is obviously there. It reduces the number of windows you need to have open. You get kind of instantaneous feedback without even thinking about running your code. But how did this all come together?
It actually started out of our other product. So we've got another product called Wallaby.js, and Wallaby came first. And Wallaby does a similar thing to Quokka, but it actually executes in the context of running your JavaScript or TypeScript tests. And so we were often using Wallaby, and we could see there's a certain amount of setup that you need to do in order to be able to run in the context of, say, unit testing with Jest or Mocha or whatever testing framework that you're using. And wouldn't it be great if there was an easier way just to run some bespoke code? And so Quokka shares a lot of the core runtime framework with Wallaby and a lot of the core features like the gutter indicators, the live value display, but Quokka runs just as a node application. So the entry point for Quokka is your current file, whereas the entry point for our other product, Wallaby, is your tests for your project. So it's similar thing, but a little bit different.
Wow, absolutely incredible. I don't think we'll be able to cover all of the questions that we did get in chat because we're already past the kind of 30-minute mark. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure, can people reach you? You have at S. McKinley is your
at S.
handle?
McKinley, my Twitter. I don't usually use that very often, but please DM me if you'd
You'll
like
have to use it today. Well,
Yep,
I think you'll get a couple of people bothering you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Absolutely amazing.
Thanks for having me, Kendra.
Yeah, that's Wallaby Quokka. Check it out.